Hey guys, for the last couple of years I've been trying not to buy an Aimpoint T2, and as you can see by the Aimpoint T2 on your screen, I have finally failed in that task. I know the Aimpoint T2 is an excellent red dot, definitely one of the best on the market. I avoided buying it though for a couple of reasons. One, I had easy access to it because several of my friends have T2s, so if I ever needed one for comparison, I could just borrow one of theirs. That's also how I know firsthand that it's such a great red dot, but that meant that there was really nothing for me to learn by buying a T2, and it's not really something I can review because it's an old red dot and very much a known quantity. So I've been waiting for Aimpoint to come out with some sort of hypothetical futuristic T3, and in the meantime I've been trying all of the different Aimpoint competitors and learning pretty quickly that none of them can really hang with the actual Aimpoint. The upshot is most of them don't cost nearly as much as the Aimpoint T2. I got this one as a ScalarWorks bundle for, I think, $850. That's basically the price that you're going to pay now. For a long time, you could get these without a mount for $600, and depending on the mount that you got, maybe they would cost, a little less than $800, $850, but that's kind of been a pretty consistent price for the last couple of years. And if you think back to my crackpot LCAN theory, you don't see a lot of Aimpoint T2s for sale on the secondary market because there aren't a lot of unsatisfied customers when it comes to Aimpoint products. So today I'm going to try to present the case for the T2 and also present the case against the T2. Maybe we can convince some of the Aimpoint haters that there is actually something here, even though you can get cheaper Holosuns that look just as good on paper. And maybe we can also convince some of the Aimpoint fans out there that there is some merit in a lot of the complaints people have about Aimpoint products, particularly when you factor in the price. So first, let's start with all the things that are wrong with the Aimpoint T2, the stuff that makes it really hard to justify paying $850 for one, and the stuff that looks really bad when you just do a straight-up comparison against, for example, a SIG or Holosun red dot, at least on paper. Again, the actual user experience sometimes differs from what you see on the spec sheet. The number one frustration with the Aimpoint T2, at least for me, is the turret caps and the zeroing procedure. The turrets on the Aimpoint T2 require a specialized tool, which I think is referred to as a spanner design. It's basically two slightly spaced out little circular divots, and that's what you need to use in order to adjust the zero. One of the two turret caps has those two little projections to serve as sort of a spanner wrench so that you can flip it around and adjust the turret cap. Most other red dots on the market have some variation of this. They just have regular old slots in the turrets for adjusting. However, you can use pretty much any old tool off your belt or a car key or a coin or the edge of a casing to adjust those. And a lot of those also do have a little blade on the end of the turret cap that you can use to adjust them. If you look at certain red dots, like some of the Holosuns and SIGs right now, they will actually have two different turret caps, one that has a lower profile ridge and one that has a higher profile one, and that's so that the turret cap that sits on the top doesn't protrude beyond the protective wing. So if you drop something directly on the top of the red dot, it's not going to punch the turret back into the body of the red dot. That was a potential issue on the Aimpoint T1. It didn't have any protective wings coming up over the turrets. The Aimpoint T2 does have protective wings to keep those turrets from getting punched into the body of the optic on some kind of impact or drop. The T2 also comes with two different turret caps. The one on the top does not have the little spanner head adjustment. The one on the side does. So when you're zeroing your T2, you take both of the caps off and try really hard not to lose them, and you use the one that has a little spanner head to adjust both turrets. If you're really big into the Aimpoint ecosystem, you should probably consider getting a little tool from, I think, Multitasker Tools called the Nano, which is a very tiny little tool you can store pretty much anywhere on the gun or in your kit that has that little spanner head adjustment wrench. So you can take the caps off your Aimpoint, put them safely in a pocket or something, and then use that tool to adjust the zero, then cap it all back up when you're done. It seems like a very minor annoyance, and it is, but it just doesn't really make any sense because I cannot think of a compelling reason not to just let somebody use any random tool unless you're just so paranoid that they're going to use a slightly undersized bit and just strip the shit out of the turrets. I don't know, man, just let the end user worry about that. It does mean that zeroing an Aimpoint T2 is a little bit frustrating. If you look at other newer models, like for example, I believe the Comp M5, that one has the little spanner head on both turret caps, which, is an improvement, I guess, but not really great. And any hopes that I had that the Aimpoint T3 would have a more sensible adjustment system were completely dashed when I saw the Acro P2, which uses a Torx T10 to adjust the turrets, which is even worse than the spanner head, because at least you can cram other stuff into the spanner head pretty easily, like the ends of a needle nose plier or whatever. With Torx, that's not a very good idea because the splines are so small, you really don't want to bust the shit out of them. So again, it's not the end of the world. A Torx T10 driver is probably the most common size you're going to find. You could just stick one of those little Allen keys somewhere on your kit and you'll be good to go. But newer designs like the Acro P2 are more of a lateral step and not exactly an improvement. I'll bet you $5 that the Aimpoint T3 has exposed turret adjusters using the Torx T10 instead of the old Snake Eyes system with caps. This offer is only valid for the first person to claim that bet, and I think somebody already did. You know who you are. Anyway. Another peculiarity about the Aimpoint T2 is the flip caps that it comes with. The front is opaque and the rear is transparent. That seems like a bizarre holdover from a bygone age. I'm not sure if anybody can actually successfully justify that decision anymore. If you compare that to another semi-high-end red dot like the Romeo 4T or 4XT Pro, those come with a whole bunch of different cap options, including the solid front and transparent rear, which I think is just Aimpoint inertia affecting the rest of the industry for no good reason. But those also come with a screw-in kill flash for the front, as well as a clear flip cap for the front, so you can configure them in a much more sensible manner. The design of the Romeo 4T and 4XT Pro also has a secondary sacrificial lens on the front of the red dot, which is kind of a cool feature, meaning that you don't even really need the flip caps per se. The last little nitpick we can bring against the Aimpoint T2 is that the tube diameter is very small. The T2 has an 18mm lens compared to 20mm for most other micro tube style red dots, and then of course there are plenty of larger tube red dots if you're really into that sort of thing. I still refuse to believe that this is a real problem. I think some people mount their red dots too far back and then shoot with one eye closed, and then they get obsessed with field of view through an optic, but that's just not how red dots work. So do I care that the Aimpoint T2 has a very small tube diameter? No, because you shouldn't even be conscious of the dot's position in the tube at all. You should be seeing a dot floating in space. You should be looking well beyond the housing of the red dot. You shouldn't be seeing the tube at all. And at least for normal right-handed shooters like me, the Aimpoint T2 works great in that regard. The tube is very low profile and slim. The battery cap and brightness adjustment wheel is on the right side where you don't notice it as much. Everything is great there. Compare that to something like the Primary Arms MD25. Has a much larger window, but a thicker housing and a big old battery cap hanging off the left side of the optic. It is a much worse experience to shoot through despite the larger lens. Honestly, my biggest complaint about the Aimpoint T2 from a gear reviewer's perspective is that it's just boring. There's really not much to talk about and not a lot of reason to try to review one in square brackets current year. It's 2023 when I record this. If the video doesn't come out by 2023, then I'll have really failed as a human being. I'm sure some people are going to bring up the lack of advanced features like a solar panel backup system or an automatic off and shake awake. But in my mind, those are, if not positives per se, things that contribute to the major positives of the Aimpoint T2, which is durability, ruggedness, robust design, reliability, and quality. Battery life on almost all modern red dots is so good that the automatic off and shake awake isn't really all that useful anymore. The Aimpoint T2 uses a CR2032 coin-style battery, and it has perfectly adequate battery life. I don't exactly know what the numbers are, and they don't matter anyway, because they're all just marketing numbers. The Comp M5 uses a AAA battery, the Comp M4 uses a AA battery, and both of them have even more battery life than the T2. 50,000 hours of battery life is the number people tend to default to, but it doesn't really matter all that much if it's 50,000, 80,000, 100,000 hours of battery life. Batteries for these optics are not so rare or expensive or hard to find that it's going to make an appreciable difference. As long as you can leave the device on, it will be on when you need it to be on, and you don't have to change the battery on even a yearly schedule if you don't want to. Trying to cram an automatic shut-off and shake-awake feature into a red dot at this point is kind of unnecessary complexity. All it really does is drive the price up and drive the complexity up, just more things that could potentially go wrong. With an Aimpoint T2, you are not worried that one day it just won't wake up. This red dot is boring, but that's kind of its best feature. It doesn't have any gimmicks at all. It is a red dot that you can turn on and leave on. There are also the more nebulous benefits of Aimpoint build quality and quality control. Until the Acro series came out, I could count on 0 fingers the number of people who have told me they had issues with an Aimpoint product. For some reason, the Acro P2 seems to be dying at nearly Holocaust rates, but the Aimpoint Micros and the Comp series are still going strong. And the last thing about the Aimpoint T2 that makes it worthwhile, in my opinion, is the outstanding night vision performance given the form factor. The T2 does not perform on the same level as an EOTech EXPS3 or a SIG Romeo 8T. But it's so much lighter and smaller than those top-tier mailbox optics that it's a completely acceptable trade-off in my opinion. If you want your Aimpoint T2 to sit a little higher for night vision use, you can get one of these ScalarWorks 1.93 risers, or just buy it in a bundle already put together for you, which is very nice. The ScalarWorks NV height riser weighs less than the absolute or lower 1/3 Aimpoint brand quick release mounts. So we can put one of these things on a taller riser to make it better for use with night vision while simultaneously making the package lighter and slimmer. Not to mention, the ScalarWorks mounts have almost perfect return to zero, which is fucking cool. If you want to jack up the height on an EOTech or Romeo 8T, then you have to put it on an additional riser, which just makes it heavier. And I know that people who have never been outside before will tell you that weight doesn't matter, but it's okay to just ignore them. The lower profile body also makes it arguably better for use in extremely dim conditions where passive aiming is borderline non-viable to begin with. In those cases, you kind of have to use your red dot in occluded shooting style, so you're covering up the target, and the smaller and thinner your red dot body is, the easier it's going to be to actually do. That's less of an issue if you're using a dual tube system or you have plenty of ambient light. So there you go, that's my excuse for why I finally just gave up and accepted the Aimpoint T2 into my life. I was young and carefree once, but now I'm in my 30s and I'm ready to settle. If you've decided you're going to pull the trigger on an Aimpoint and you're just unsure if you should get the T2 or the Comp M5, I would recommend going with the T2. All the reasons you think you want a Comp M5 don't actually hold up to scrutiny. The benefits of being able to use a AAA battery simply don't exist. First of all, you're not going to put an alkaline battery in there because under some sort of temperature shift, that thing will probably leak in under a month. So who gives a shit if it has 100,000 hours of battery life when you kill your optic completely dead to death within a couple of weeks? Also, if you're in some sort of apocalypse situation and you think that a AAA battery is going to be easier to find than a CR2032 battery, consider that it doesn't matter because after your first battery dies within 100,000 hours, all of the alkaline batteries that were left at the beginning of the apocalypse will have leaked and exploded. Alkaline AAA batteries are extremely common, but lithium AAAs are probably generally harder to find than CR2032 batteries, which are always lithium. So before you get excited about using AAAs in your optic, just apply a little bit of common sense, and also keep in mind that the little rheostat wheel on the Comp M5 kinda sucks. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If you like this channel, please subscribe. You can also find a link in the video description to my Subscribestar page, which is a way that you can support me more directly. You'll get early access to videos, you'll also get access to the little podcast episodes that I do with Brass Facts, as well as some behind the scenes stuff. There's also a Discord server, but joining it is sort of a rite of passage. You have to find it on your own, and you have to figure out how to gain entry. And if you can't figure it out, we probably didn't want to talk to you anyway. See you guys next time.
As a result of poor planning,